What's up, everybody? Patrick here from Waterlust, and we are doing a fun surfboard project today, and it's all about painting. First, we're going to look at the board that we found on OfferUp. We're going to go over some of the repairs that it needed and what needed to be done to it to prepare it for paint. Then we're going to talk about the actual method we're going to use and discuss any materials you will need to replicate this in your home. And then we're gonna actually do it. We're gonna break out the paint. We're gonna show you step by step how we paint on these old surfboards, and hopefully by the end you'll know exactly what to do, and it'll work well for you and your board. Before we get going, just a reminder, these videos are brought to you by Waterlust, and if you don't know, Waterlust is a super cool company that uses clothing like shirts, board shorts. These are our prototype hats that are coming out soon, made entirely of recycled material, not just the mesh, also the brim, the snapback, the whole thing, 100% recycled, the first hats on the market that are like that. And we use clothing as a science communication tool to help promote ocean conservation. We're all scientists by training and decided, let's start a clothing company. So if you like these videos, you want to see more of them, you want to support us, go over to waterlust.com, get yourself some gear. But all right, let's dive into it. Let's take a look at the board that we found. Here is the board. Fiona found this board on OfferUp. It is a 7.6 Cannibal, which is a local Florida surfboard company, super cool company. And she found this board for $50. And we've done some work to it. It actually was in quite a bit of rough shape, and you can see a lot of the fairing and some of the fiberglass work we've done. I didn't show that because it's very similar to the work we've done in other videos, and I really wanted to focus this video on painting. But yeah, it's, the board is, needed a new tail repair. It had a bunch of fiberglass repairs, but honestly, nothing super major on the deck. The board itself was in pretty good shape. It didn't have anything like majorly wrong with it, but it had a lot of like little things. So if I go here and look at the bottom, you can see there's we had a lot of little dings. There's a pretty big ding here, and this was actually previously repaired, and we had to kind of come back and clean that up. Some repairs up here. So overall, pretty ugly. The board definitely looks pretty ugly right now, but functionally it's perfectly strong. There's no problems with the structural integrity of this board. This board can last many years, and like we say with all of our videos, you could surf this board right now. You don't have to paint it, but I don't know, I think it's a little bit gnarly looking, so would love to get this cleaned up. What you may notice here, this is super cool. My wife, Fiona, made me a surfboard stand. How cool is this? It was a surprise gift she made me, and it's so awesome. I think I have the coolest wife ever. So yeah, you'll be seeing that surfboard stand in future videos, and it makes the work a lot easier because the board, I used to use this table over here, but this board is much higher and I don't have to bend over as much. So this is the board, $50, a pretty sweet deal. 7.6 mid shape, a fun shape. Will be a really fun board for the family. And one reason I'm doing all this work is I'm getting my family more into surfing. My sister-in-law, my brother-in-law, my wife, and they're all interested in trying out different boards. And instead of going and buying a bunch of boards to try, I can just get super cheap boards on Craigslist and OfferUp, fix them up. And then down the road, if they find they really like a board and they want to maybe get a custom shape or get a new one, they can. But this is a great low-cost way to get into the sport, try out a bunch of boards. And again, we always say environmentally, this is the best way to take care of the planet. These boards are fully functional. They just need a little bit of love. No reason this should end up in a landfill like it probably would have if we hadn't stepped in. So it's always a really gratifying process to bring one of these boards back to life. So this is the board, Cannibal 7.6, good to go. We have our surfaces are all cleaned. We've sanded it. We're ready for paint. So let's walk through what we're gonna do to paint this board. On this board today, we're gonna be using the roll and tip method with boat paint, specifically Total Boat Wet Edge 1-part polyurethane paint. And I really stumbled across using this by accident. And you may have seen on an older video, we painted this board. This is a Stewart 9.6 Colin McPhillips Pro Nose Rider that I've had for a very long time, and it was in really bad shape. And I fixed it up, and then I just had some leftover paint at my house and we just rolled it on. We were super sloppy when we rolled it on. We didn't even thin it out, just rolled it on. And this is the board almost 4 years later. And if I look in close, you know, we got some scratches here and there, but I mean, Fiona, the whole family rides this board. This is like the village bicycle board. And you know, it's in remarkably good shape for how sloppily we applied the topside paint. I mean, literally just like rolled it on and left it. And we have a video, our first ever repair video is of this board. And I gotta say, my expectations for how well the paint was gonna perform over the years were like moderately high. But I've been really, really impressed with how it's worked. And so I've continued to use that method. This is a foil board I actually built last winter. It's a carbon fiber board. I made it for my GoFoil for kite surfing and paddling surfing. And it's been, this board's about a year and like 3 months old. And on this one, I wanted it to be a lighter, I really painted this because it's carbon fiber and it's black. And in the Florida sun, the board gets really hot. And so I painted it white, and I wanted to have that kind of mixed carbon look. So I sanded it really, really flush, and it's working awesome. And the paint works really well, and it makes the board protected, and it makes the board much lower temperature. And we also have that previous board we did in the last video. And so we've done a bunch of boards with this paint, and it works really well. It's so approachable. You don't need a spray gun, you don't need anything. You really just need a paintbrush, a roller, you know, some thinner, and that's it. So it's a super easy way to paint a board in your backyard without any additional tools. Step one is to sand the board to 220 grit level of smoothness, and I've already done that, so we don't have to show that. 220 is what the Total Boat Topside Paint recommends. You may need to start with something more gritty. I think I started with like 80, and then I went to 100, 120, and then onward. But we want to get everything really, really smooth, because if it's a rough surface, the paint is not going to bond well. So first step is to sand the whole board, make it super smooth to 220. Step number 2 is to get some denatured alcohol, and I'll put links to everything that we use in this video in the comments below, so you can do it. But get denatured alcohol, and we're gonna just remove all of the dust and all of the, you know, any grease or anything left over from your hands. We want it to be a super clean surface so that our paint can bond really well. If you don't prep the surface well, the paint job's not going to turn out as strong as it could. So really take your time on that step. Next step is to open the paint can, and for this board we are using Fighting Lady Yellow, which I've always been very curious to see what this color looks like. Oh, that's a beautiful yellow. Okay, next step is to get a mixing stick and thoroughly mix the paint. Once your paint is mixed, it's time to pour the paint you're going to use into a mixing cup. And the reason we do that is because we have to add a little bit of thinner, or we want to add a little bit of thinner to get a better coat on the board. So for our thinner, we're using Total Boat Special Brushing Thinner 100, and we're going to use it about 10% by volume. So to do that, I have a little shot glass. It gives me a 1 ounce measurement, so I'm going to use 1 ounce of thinner, and then I'm going to use this Total Boat mixing cup, and I'm going to put in 10 ounces of paint. So it'll be a 10-to-1 ratio, 10% thinner. And the reason for that, the reason they say that's better, is it's going to thin the paint out, and we're going to be able to put really thin coats on the board. And what that does is it gives the finish a much harder, it gives it that kind of like really resilient, hard finish that we're looking for to really protect the board and prevent it from scratching. So we've got our paint ready to mix, but before we do that, we want to think about what we're gonna do next, because we're gonna need some help, or it'd be definitely beneficial to have some help. Once we've mixed the paint and we come over to the board, we're going to approach the application of the paint in what's called a roll and tip method. This is surprisingly difficult to do, and anyone that's applied varnish knows rolling and tip is pretty, it seems so easy, but it's like there's an art to it for sure. Fiona and I find that the best way to do it is working together with 2 people And generally I do the rolling and she does the tipping. So in a second, she's gonna come out, we're gonna put GoPros on our head, and we're gonna actually show you and walk you through like the actual process. But just some tips ahead of time. I think most of any mistakes tend to happen from the roller. And usually what happens is you roll too far ahead, and then when the tipper comes back, part of that, the paint line has dried. So it's really, and then you can see it. So it's really important that the roller rolls like only like maybe like two or three widths ahead, and then let the tipper come through and then quickly move on to the next. If you leave that line too long, it's going to dry a little bit, and then you're going to see it. And we may have that happen. I mean, we're okay at it. We're not great at it. You can work around that with a second coat, but if we do a great job, we might get away with just doing one coat. Before we start rolling and tipping the bottom of the board, we're probably going to do the rails first. And that's kind of hard to tip. I usually just roll it, and then Fiona might come in and just kind of like sort of tip it a little bit, but we'll do the perimeter of the rails, and then and then the top. Let it dry, and then we're gonna flip and do the top side of the board. So let's get the GoPros on, and we'll show you exactly what the experience is like. You're rolling. Here's your sword.
We look pretty dorky.
We're super dorky. Gonna be a hero. Wait, am I rolling?
Yeah.
All right. So why don't we do a dry run and explain to people like what we're doing? I kind of already explained it, that I'm going to roll it on and you're going to tip it, but could you kind of show like what is it you're going for when you tip?
It's basically smoothing it out and getting rid of the bubbles, right?
Mm-hmm.
And
you tell me. I'm not good at this. You know how to do it. I've never tipped before.
We go wet to dry.
I'm going to be going here, so this will be wetter and this will technically be drier.
Yeah. So we go from wet to dry.
Okay.
Very lightly across to get rid of the bubbles and make it all like nice and even and smooth.
That's why they call it wet edge, I think, is that this is supposed to be like the wet edge of, you're trying to like engage the wet edge of the paint. So like as you're getting to the end,
rolls, like go like kind of lighter, so you're just like laying it down versus like putting down like thicker.
I remember.
And then I'll kind of like smooth it out.
Okay.
But that's got to be like pretty smooth to begin with.
Okay.
And then this is just like the very light.
And this is a foam nap roller. I'll put a link to it in the video, but you have to use a specific type of roller. If you use like a really matty one, it'll be a disaster. So we're gonna first put it up here. And we also chose this color because it kind of matches the color of the board already. So it should give us a good coverage. So when I wet out the roller, I dry it out pretty significantly. I don't want dripping. I want this to be a pretty thin coat. It's better, I think, for it to be too dried out than too wet. So here we go. I can't imagine doing this by yourself.
Should go wet to.
Yeah, I gotta go wet to dry. Engage that wet edge. Oops, sorry. This is far and away the most satisfying part of fixing a board because all the repairs just like disappear. I think about, what's that guy's name? Bob Ross? The guy in PBS? Okay, that's pretty good. So this one, like this paint's still going, that one dip was enough. I might need to do another one. Okay, the moment of truth.
I like how light the color is.
Okay, here we go. Really light. It's usually wettest at the very beginning. So I'm just going to be really light with it. And I'm trying to definitely connect in the rails. Hold on, I'm not ready. I'm trying to get it into that cloth. Okay. And then when she's tipping, I'm gonna get a little bit more, but I can't take too long. That's the key. I gotta like get right back there. And then engage that wet edge. I'm kind of like trying to fade my faded in, so I'm like soft here, and then progressively a little harder as I get farther away, because if I push down more, I get more paint.
I'm moving fast enough so that edge always stays wet.
Correct.
So you can see like the dimples before the brush goes through, and then the brush just kind of like evens all those dimples out.
Okay, here's that wet edge. I'm going soft here. Going soft. Now pushing down harder to get that. I love this color.
Yeah, I really like it.
Soft.
It's really nice.
Sometimes you got to push, like here, I got to push a little harder to get them in all those little nooks and crannies of the.
Oh, we got a nice little dent there.
We did a lot of work on getting all the dents, fairing this board down so that it would make the roll and tipping easier. Nice. Okay, here we go. Soft. Softer. And then as I move back, pushing harder now. Oops. It's kind of a weird color for a surfboard. Like it's not, you know, like typical.
Nice.
I feel like
light with the heat though.
I would see like a boat in Nantucket color this. Not a surfboard necessarily, but that's what's kind of fun about it. Okay, softer, softer, and really soft. A little harder, a little harder.
Yeah, pressure's making a big difference. Last time we kind of had like those lines.
Yeah.
A little bit.
Yeah,
and they got covered up when we did the second coat, and I think we got better at it with time.
Yeah.
That pressure.
That's why we're trying
to really help.
That's why we're making this video, so you guys don't make the same mistakes we have.
With this brush, I'm just going like as light as I can go, basically.
You have to be sort of disciplined not to fuss with it too much. Like, it's easy to want to keep rolling and rolling and rolling and rolling, and then the next thing you know, the edge is drying and you can't fuss too much.
This bit here again.
Yeah. Just kind of make that transition a little bit better. There we go. First coat of Fighting Lady Yellow is on. Board looks sweet. And we're just going to leave this to dry overnight. And then we'll flip the board and do the top side. Top coat of the board is dry. Looks awesome. You can kind of see the logo still here a little bit. So we're going to give this board a second coat. And to do that, we take our 220 grit sandpaper. Going to sand the entire board and then give it a second coat using the same method as the first. I've finished sanding the board, and just quickly, what we're going for here is it's a light sand. We're using 220 grit, and we're not putting that much pressure on the pad. We don't want to just sand off all the paint we just put on. All we're really trying to do is just prepare this surface for a second coat. So definitely better to be more sensitive than overly aggressive. And this is just to show you sort of the finish that we're looking for. Just lightly abrasions across the whole board, the rails, the top. And now we should be good to go, get a nice good bond strength on our second coat of paint. And with the help of movie magic, we can get that done in 3, 2, 1. Ta-da! Look at that, board is done. We skipped the final steps just because it gets repetitive, but man, this came out so good. I love how the Fighting Lady Yellow came out. 2 coats was definitely the call. The first coat, it didn't look quite as yellow as I was wanting, but then that second coat, it came out really good. So yeah, we're done. The board is all protected. It's got that really nice hard finish that you look for with this topside paint. And this board's ready to rock, hit the water, and I can't wait to ride it. It's super fun looking shape. So there we go. Thank you guys for joining me in another board building project. I hope this was informative and helpful. And again, if you like these videos, head on over to waterlust.com, get yourself like a tank top, board shorts, anything that you want to wear to the beach. And we're stoked to have you as part of this community. And we'll hit you back. We've got some other board projects we're thinking about in the future. So if you have any questions or comments on the processes that we did here, let me know. I'll put all the parts that we used in the painting in the description below. And if there's a certain type of board project that you have questions about that you think we should cover in a video, let us know in the comments. Anyway, have fun surfing. See ya.